Okay, now let me just say one thing. Never go home with strangers. I don't care how hot they are. Just don't! What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Reptastic, where movies and entertainment are our reputation. So We Summon the Darkness was directed by Marc Meyers and stars Alexandra Daddario, Amy Forsyth, and Maddie Hasson. And it follows the story of Alexis, Val, and Beverly, three best friends who embark on a road trip to a concert in Indiana where they bond with three aspiring musicians for an after party at one of the girls' country home for a night of terror. Sorry, Crypt Keeper. Okay, all jokes aside, let's get into the positives of this film. First of all, let me just say, I seen this film when it was released on DVD. It was one of those kind of direct-to-DVD hits, of course. And I started looking at it. I looked at the back of the box, and it started looking pretty interesting. And they finally streamed it on Netflix. So I just got done watching it, and I gotta tell you, it wasn't all that bad. Especially for a low-budget, straight-to-home release. Now let's get into the positives. The story. It was pretty decent. It's what you would expect from a low-budget home video release. You don't really get that much out of releases like this. It's nothing like Halloween. It's nothing like Nightmare on Elm Street or any of those iconic characters. This is just one of those films that I think filmmakers, like straight out of film school, just wanted to try out. Some of them hit and miss, but some of them actually do pretty good. Like this film. I like the whole idea that these three girls, these three innocent kind of looking girls, but not too innocent. You know, you wouldn't think that they would be capable of the things that they did in this movie. Would go on a road trip and just pick up these three guys, and then all of a sudden you find out that they're batshit crazy. All this over some satanic bullcrap that they keep on wanting to spread out on the news, when actually they're not a part of any group. They don't care about any of that stuff. They just want to spread fear. Kind of like the Joker from Batman. And I know, yeah, some of y'all are probably thinking I'm crazy for comparing it like that, but you think about it, you know, they're killing people, and they want to make it look like a tragic suicide or satanic worship or whatever, when they're just these three that just wants to create havoc and panic. Kind of like what the news is actually doing right now, so to speak. You know, this film doesn't really show anything new, but I'm not saying that it was bad either. I'm not saying that it was horrible, it was a piece of trash, though a lot of people are saying that online. But, you know, what can you expect from a movie like this? It's not one of those big budget films that you will see in theaters, even if all theaters was opened up today. It's just not going to happen with something like this. But for a low budget, straight to home release, I actually thought it was decent enough. And I've seen a lot worse, believe me. This film has your typical stereotype of allurance. Like with most horror films, you get the villain that tries to play off as the good guy. And then they lure these other people in by, you know, playing a game or whatever, which is basically what happens. And then you find out, hey, these chicks are crazy. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Psychopaths. Yeah, can't put it any other way, which is the norm for most slashers. I mean, basically, you can't deny that. Speaking of characters, let's talk about these girls. Wow. You know, at first they seemed really innocent, and then you get to find out their true colors. And I gotta say, God, I don't care how hot you are. You not sticking me in a van, you not locking me up, you not tying me to a chair. The hell with that. These chicks were just crazy. Particularly Alexandra Daddario. I like this actress. Ever since I've seen her in Texas Chainsaw back in 2013, she's popped up every now and then, even in a couple of Percy Jackson films, which I never really was fond of. And she played in San Andreas with The Rock, which was pretty good. That was the only other big budget Hollywood film that I've seen her do, until she did this. Now, I may be oblivious. I may have missed a few. She may have popped up here and there. But I know she's one of those that's trying. And that, you know, she's got charisma. She's got a good talent. And I thought she did a really good job in this film, especially as a crazy broad. I think she was the main chick, the main baddie of this film. And it's all in her eyes. Ever since I seen her in Texas Chainsaw, even though she played sort of an innocent part in that film, I always thought of her being crazy because it's all in her eyes. And for an actress, that's pretty good to have. I mean, one look at those eyes, you can tell that she's got, like, the eyes of a psychopath. Yeah, I know, I just quoted Dr. Loomis from Rob Zombie's Halloween. Sue me. These are the eyes of a psychopath. And that's what she had in this. And she reminded me so much of the killer from Scream 2, which I won't give any of the Scream 2 thing away, but yeah, if I had to compare it to anything, the way Alexandra Daddario's character was in this, especially by the third act, I have to compare it to the psycho killer in the Scream 2. Because that's how crazy she was. It's as if Norma Bates had a more crazier sister, or half-sister, or whatever you want to call it. If Norman Bates had a sister. And then you got the other crazies, played by Amy Forsyth and Maddie Hasson. They played their parts all pretty good. Though I do have a couple of problems, or one main problem, with Maddie Hasson's character. But I'll get into that later. But Amy Forsyth, I've seen her in Hellfest, which came out in 2018. And she was pretty good in that too. But in this, she played a pretty good part. I don't want to give too much away because this is a fairly new release. And I don't know how much of y'all saw this film. But she does have a twist about her that shows up later on. That kind of focuses on the ending a little bit. But again, I won't give too much away. But I thought she did a really good job. She pushes back pretty much. And it may not seem like it at first, but she hangs pretty tough. She's a pretty tough woman. And I thought she gave a pretty good performance. So did Maddie Hasson. I mean, she showed the right amount of crazy, but not nearly comparable to Daddario. Maddie came a close second. Taron Anderson's cinematography work was done pretty well. He gave the look and feel of this film a pretty good horror vibe. Kind of claustrophobic. The whole thing takes place in this house in the country where nobody else is around, which is also your basic stereotype of a horror film. It's kind of like a cabin in the woods scenario, only it was like a house right out in the middle of the country where nobody could hear you, which is your basic stereotype and pretty typical for a horror film. The gore effects was right on spot. I don't know if they used any practical effects. I think they did because this was a pretty low budget horror film. Usually in a horror film they go with like everything practical. And like KY jelly or KY blood or whatever they call it. I thought it looked pretty good. I thought it gave the film the right amount of oomph for it, for any horror fan. It looked very practical, and it wasn't that obvious either. It didn't look fake or anything. Now, let's slide into my negatives. Going back to what I said about Maddie Hasson's character, writer Alan Trezza decided to give this character a little bit of a comic relief, which to me, it was kind of a swing and a miss. But it was just annoying. It was annoying as heck. And like the first few times it gets brought up, I was okay with it. But then they kept on pursuing it, even in serious scenes. And it just made that character just very annoying. And it sort of took me out of the film, but I digress. Johnny Knoxville also appears in this film. Many of y'all know him as a jackass. Sorry. In the Jackass films. And after watching those, which I never really was a fan of, but I caught glimpses of them, you can't take this guy seriously. And he was supposed to be one of the main villains as well. He plays a pastor who you see in the beginning of the film on a television set at a gas station. And you hear him on the radio when the girls was driving down the road. And then he decides to show up. They decide to write him in to the film itself and show up at the end of the film. And at that point, I was like, I just couldn't get into him. He wasn't intimidating. He didn't do anything for me. I mean, knowing who he was, I don't know about you guys, but knowing who he was, you know, seeing him in Jackass, seeing him in The Last Stand, and all these funny parts, you can't take somebody like that seriously. I mean, yeah, they could try, and there are other actors out there that has tried that and succeeded. But with Johnny Knoxville, I just couldn't get into him. He even played a silly part in Men in Black 2. And it's like, because of that, it kind of sustained or stained him from doing serious parts, for me anyway. He just didn't do anything for me. I would have been fine if they'd have just kept him in the dark, kept him as a background, and just made it all about the girls. Even his motives wasn't that strong as to why he was doing this. To me, it just seemed really weak. I mean, his motive was just not good. I mean, yeah, it all came down to money, but still, it just wasn't that good. It wasn't that strong. But again, going back to what I said before, what else can you expect from a movie of this magnitude? Even Timothy Williams' score didn't do anything. It didn't help it. It didn't help anything. I mean, during the serious parts, it just felt very watered down to a point to where I didn't even feel like I was watching a horror film, even in serious scenes, because it just didn't seem like the score was trying. And it just felt so weak and so... I can't even come up with the words because it was so bad. It just didn't seem like they were trying. It wasn't your typical horror theme. I mean, at first, when it first popped up on the score, when you first hear the score and the scene starts getting serious, yeah, maybe, but the rest of it, I just, no. Just didn't do anything for me. Sorry. Despite its flaws and it being an obvious low-budget straight-to-DVD Blu-ray release, We Summon the Darkness is still a decent enough film for horror fans. It still had its moments. It's spicy but digestible. So, We Summon the Darkness, have you seen it yet? Did you find it chilling? Did you find it thrilling? Or have you seen better? Think this was a piece of crap? Leave me your comments down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for once again watching another unprecedented video. Stay tuned for more videos and reviews coming soon. Like, comment, and subscribe if you hadn't already, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace, rip out.